Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It's Eric Coffin, HR Advisories. I'm here at the September 2024 Metal Investor Forum. I'm joined by Sharyn Alexander. She's the CEO of Sun Summit Minerals, one of the companies that I invited to the show. Sun Summit picked up a really exciting project in northern BC over the winter, and they spent a bunch of time modeling. They just finished doing their first field program at JD. And I think this project has got a lot of potential. They just put out some good drill results yesterday, first results from this season. Can you explain to us, what was it that attracted Sun Summit to JD? I mean, it's a relatively not inexpensive option agreement. I know the vendors. They're not easy guys, but nonetheless, it looks like a great project. Why did the company go after this project? Because I know you spent a fair amount of time trying to get your hands on it.
Yeah. For those familiar with the story, we were at Buck in central BC, and so we weren't necessarily looking in the Tutagon. But what happened is our technical advisor, Christopher Leslie, had worked this project back in 2012, 2013 with the previous operator, and he saw that this was up for option again. He quickly put us onto it. Bob Willis, our senior advisor as well. We're very excited about this project for multiple reasons, not only because it was in an up-and-coming jurisdiction, but the grades. The high grades that they were seeing in historic core, the potential, the interest previously from majors, for example, like Freeport. And really the reason people walked away from the project was not... It was more market conditions like, BRIEX 97. It was, a pandemic, and pulling out of global operations.
Right.
And other people as well saw this potential. And you're correct that it was a competitive bidding process. There was about 6 other groups that we were in competition with. And at the end of the day, Chris's boots on ground experience on the property, planning drill programs, looking at the geophysics, looking at the size and scale potential, and putting together a really robust first and second year exploration program is what got us the deal. The vendors were very interested in putting this, into production, into developing it, into expanding it. They weren't happy just, slotting it into somebody's project portfolio. They wanted to see this advanced, and they felt that we were the company to do it. Okay.
And, this area has become quite active and quite interesting in the last few years. I'm personally well aware of the lawyers camp. My late brother worked there for a few seasons, and it was always known as a, high grade but not very large resources. There were 2 or 3 deposits there. None of them were huge. I remember talking to the guy that ran basically ran the mine for Cheni, which is a French state corporation. And he said, we threw drill holes around here, there, and everywhere. And, it's a great project, but it's just not that big. Mm-hmm. Well, that all changed 2 or 3 years ago. New group came in, 2 companies that were kind of the same management. They kind of changed the model and changed the exploration plan. And the results have been pretty impressive.
Yeah. And also to remember back in the day, and that's why it's called the Tutagon, too doggone far away from anything. It was very remote. They didn't have the road access we do today. So, a small marginal deposit wouldn't have been worthwhile. But what the thesis benchmark merger did is, and with all of that renewed interest in the area and the development that they've done, it's really brought to light the potential of multiple satellite deposits that have that potential to not only make the region economic, but to attract the big corporates and major companies. So lawyers and ranch have a combined measured, indicated and inferred resource of close to 5 million ounces. They also came up with a pretty positive PEA just recently. And of course, this is all north of the Kemess copper gold mine that was in production until 2011. And so all of that infrastructure, the mill, the hydroelectric grid, that's all in place as well. Right. There's companies like HDI Amark working with Freeport. And so there's already big names in the area. And what we're seeing on the JD project, especially going through the historic data, is the number of anomalies on this project is really impressive. It's really significant, and only a fraction have been drill tested. So when you think of this area as a whole, region of prospective deposits, that's what really brings attention to it.
Well, and I think, uh, I think Thesis came out with I think the MPV was 1.3 or 1.4 billion for ranch lawyers, which is a nice number. But I think the important thing to understand is when you look at when you look at sort of the larger claim area, you've got sort of Sun Summits here and, lawyers are down here, ranches up here. I mean, it's basically the same structural setting. It's the same rocks.
It's the same rocks, yeah.
I mean, the kind of grades that were drilled at JD in the past and what the grades were contained in, it's essentially identical to what's on both sides of you. It's all kind of one big system. So I don't think it's a stretch to think that you could come up with something a lot bigger at JD. But, saying it and showing it are two things. And I think the drilling you did this year, I mean, you just put out the first 3 holes. A big part of what you're showing is, yeah, it's not just these high grade things. We do have the scale potential too.
Exactly. And to follow along what you were saying, what Bob likes to say is the geology doesn't stop at the claim boundary.
Yeah.
It is the same rocks essentially. And yeah, you're right. A lot of the historic drilling and even, at Lawyers and Ranch, a lot of it was targeted more towards the visible mineralization, the high grade vein hosted mineralization. And at least on JD in the creek zone, a lot of the holes were only selectively sampled. They didn't even bother assaying the rest of it.
Right.
And so what Thesis is finding is that there is continuous mineralization from surface, which proves more of a bulk tonnage type scenario. We're finding the exact same thing on the JD project. And we only have 3 holes out so far. And yeah, we're finding continuous disseminated mineralization from surface, truncated by these thinner, higher grade vein hosted. So it's really the tip of the iceberg. I know these assays are highly anticipated. There's a lot of investors who are very excited about this story. And so as we continue to get more results, I think we'll learn more about the system, but also prove up the potential of this project in this area. Yeah,
and as well as the drilling, I know some of the holes still to come. They've got big mineralized intervals. I mean, who the hell knows what the grade is? I mean, you got to get it assayed, but the sulfides are there. But you also did a pretty large soil survey. Mm-hmm. You did a lot of prospecting and sampling. And do you think you're going to see some new altogether new targets, or at least targets that have never been drill tested come out of that stuff? Because that data is still to come as well.
Definitely. So for this 2024 exploration program, we were focused partially around the creek zone, so following up on some of the existing known mineralization, confirmation drilling, and stepping out. But then as well, we wanted to look at the upside. There were some geochemical and geophysical anomalies that we wanted to drill test. We also did a IP geophysical survey, and when we got the results from that, we identified some really interesting targets that we ended up drilling, and that was just a quick pivot. Planning some holes on the go. So definitely once we get those results back, we'll have more information about where we focus next year. But you're right about the soil sampling program that's down at Bell and then around Creek Zone as well. And we're still reinterpreting some of the historic geophysics. And so new targets are constantly being brought to our attention and emerging from all this historic data. So this program, obviously we didn't do as much as we'd like. But there's so many targets here, we really had to prioritize. So this would follow into year 2 and 3 in terms of where our exploration strategy and targeting would go.
Okay. It's a great story. I mean, JD is a great project. They've still got a bunch of drill holes coming. I'm expecting good news from those drill holes. I'm personally very interested to see the soil and rock geochemistry and basically layered on with the IP. Because I think we'll see some new targets in a couple of areas like Bell. Bell hadn't really seen much work in the past. But
no, not at all. But it's an area that looks highly prospective from initial exploration. And so we felt, let's put a soil sample survey there and we can do some drilling perhaps next year.
Yeah.
But I think with all these targets, it's having those coincident anomalies on top of each other, the rocks and the soils and the geophysics. I mean, it's really hitting home the prospectivity of this region. You have the Fin to Creek trend, which is close to 5 kilometers of just really prospective rock. And we're getting assays as we, over the next weeks and months, and we'll be releasing those. So, I mean, it's really a pivotal time for the company.
Okay. That's it, folks. Sun Summit Minerals, SMN on the venture. A lot of good news coming from JD. This is really a great looking project. I'm expecting big things from the project and from the company. Thanks for coming by to update us, Sharon.
Thanks, Eric.